Hello, this is Dave from reddeercitytv.ca in sunny, or not so sunny, Red Deer, Alberta today. Today I'm at Chapters, Starbucks on the south end of Red Deer. And I've met up with an author from Calgary, Sarah Johnson. And she wrote a very riveting book, collection of short stories. And it's been getting quite a good reviews. It's on the top seller list, or on the seller list in Calgary. And so, yeah, she's come to Red Deer to promote her book and share with everybody what's going on. Sarah.
Hi.
Hi. So, where are you from?
I'm from Calgary, well, Okotoks, with a minor detour to Cardston and then back.
Okay, okay.
So, Calgary, basically,
Calgary,
for a long
okay,
time.
okay. You're a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How long have you been doing this?
Not that long, actually. I find that the story you hear over and over again is I've been writing since I could hold a pen or a pencil, and but for me it really didn't start until I was about 30. So that was 7 years ago, almost 8.
Okay.
We'll go with 7. But I've always been a voracious reader. And my parents, wonderful people that they are, gave absolute no supervision at all over what I read as a child. So, yeah, my tastes, you could call them eclectic.
So, your upbringing, did that have a direct result to what your subject matters you're writing today?
It's a definite influence. So I grew up in a devout Mormon household, which actually isn't as creepy as it sounds, or at least I don't think it's creepy, but what do I know? That was my experience. But, we were a pretty normal family, but definitely when I started to write, like that's something that creeps in again and again, is the idea of not just religion, but the idea of a higher power, the idea of faith, the idea of abiding by rules because you're afraid something will happen to your immortal soul if you don't. So it's a frequently occurring theme in my stories and in my writing.
So you touch on a lot of that spiritual, emotional spot that everybody sort of harbors.
Yeah, and also just my idea is if these things were real, what would the real story be? What would they be like? Like we always think of, say God as this sort of benevolent father figure, but like, what if that wasn't necessarily the case? What if he was just like any other dad doing the best he can and occasionally screwing up big time? Things like that.
Okay. Is this your is this your first or second book, or what?
This is my first published book, so it's called Suicide Stitch. It's 11 short stories. This represents 8 years of writing. My very first short story that I ever wrote is in here, and I never would have wrote that story if I hadn't taken a writing class, and there was another writer in that class. Her name is Ria Torvidas. She's got a book coming out in September. And she really mentored me. She got me writing short stories, and she really took me to task. She didn't treat me like a novice. She really took my stories and said, this is not good enough. You can do better, over and over and over again.
So she kept pushing.
Yeah, so that's what got me started, and it just went from there. I've written a lot more short stories than what are in this book, but this is 11 of the stories that seem to kind of go together around a common theme.
Common theme, okay. So let's just talk about the book a little bit. We were just talking earlier, and basically you were saying it's just a collective stories of relationships that could be erotic but non-sexual, but could be exploring the boundaries of our relationships?
Actually, that's a really good way of putting it, sort of the boundaries of relationships and sort of the underbelly of what people think about when they think of what love is, you know, like this glorious, beautiful thing. But I think there's another side of it, you know, that's very destructive, and that could ruin you. So, I mean, I call these love stories, and people are kind of like, people who've read the stories kind of think, okay, but really, I do think at the heart of it, they're all about love and different kinds of love, you know, between romantic partners, between siblings, between parents and children, and just how heartbreaking it can be.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
when
real
love
life
turns ugly. Yeah.
Yeah, real life. Like we have our preconceived notion of what love could be, what our ideal, and a lot of it's polluted by, you know, what we see on TV and what we see in the movies, right? And our general everything that gets bombarded with advertising, and this is what love.
Well, it's really been
supposed to be, right?
romanticized, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
and
over-romanticized.
to me, you know, love isn't necessarily a romantic thing. It's got moods. It's got you know, secrets, and
Yeah, well, it's a life of teeter-totter things, right? Life's up and downs. I mean,
Yeah.
life's not linear, so it doesn't go from, you know, stop to start. I mean, we have our pitfalls and all that. So, what what really made you go down that road with this first published book? Like, why did you go to the dark? I guess we can almost say the dark side of relationships, but not really. But it's.
I just always do. I'll start writing a story, and I think it's about one thing, and I'll try to go into it thinking, okay, this is going to be something that's lighter and happy, and it's like, oh no, there it went again. You know, down the rabbit hole, down into the pit.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I feel like stories become their own thing. And you can't necessarily control where, well, you can, but when I've tried to steer a story to where I think it should go,
Yeah.
it usually feels very forced, and, you know, it doesn't resonate with readers and things like that. But
Right.
so yeah, I just all my stories tend to kind of be somewhat in the darkness.
Oh, okay. The topics that you were writing about, they weren't driven by history from your past history of any dark things that happened into you, and because you know how most people writers like to write about things that are problem to them, and you know, writing helps get things out.
I don't generally write about specific things that have happened to me. Of course, I'm always drawing from my experience, you know, whether it's the same events or whether it's just something that had the same feeling but taken kind of to the next level. The title story, Suicide Stitch, is about sisters. And one sister is left to sort of close off the other's life when she dies suddenly in a car accident. And I have a sister, and we're very close. And I had the hardest time writing that story because I could not wrap my head around a life where I exist and she doesn't. Like, I just could not do it. And it was like there was a wall in my brain that wouldn't let me go there, because I feel like I would die if that happened. And I wouldn't have a choice. I just would. So in that way, I feel like it relates to my life, but not in terms of what happens in the stories.
Okay,
no.
so I mean, you're drawing on what ifs, and
Yeah.
where your emotional writing goes from there, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So a few of the stories. Can you sort of touch on a few of the stories?
Yeah.
We heard
sure.
the one about the sisters.
So, well, that's the last story in the book, so I'll start at the beginning with the first story. So the first story is called Thank You for Playing, and that story kind of has a story of its own. Calgary Reads and a program called Reading Town, that every year they have this week-long sort of festival celebrating books and reading, and they do it in a different city every year. And they did it in Calgary last year, and they held it in the oldest neighborhood in the city, which is Inglewood and Ramsey. And what they wanted was a story that could be broken into chunks, and each part of the story sort of displayed at a different point of a walking tour of the neighborhood. So they asked if I was asked to write a story for it, and of course they're wanting something lovely and family friendly, and it is. It's probably the most family friendly thing I've ever written, but but even then it kind of went to the dark place. It's a man who keeps finding little post-it notes all over the neighborhood addressed to him, asking him to do things, and they're like random acts of kindness. It's nothing bad that they're asking him to do, but there's sort of this implicit threat that if he doesn't comply with these instructions, something bad will happen to him. And it's all about sort of a sense of community and being proud of, where you live.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, nice. Isn't that sort of like the underlying theme for most humans, that we always think that if we don't continue a certain line, from our whatever faith or whatever things we believe in, that the devastating
consequence, that nebulous consequence, you don't know what it is.
They're watching you,
but it might happen. Yeah, exactly.
So why do you think people are so hung up on that and not want to change? Like go from, you don't have to go really off base, but I mean, everybody has that line that they stay on, right?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I think because as human beings, it's kind of almost wired into our brains that if there's something we don't understand, and the parts of life we don't understand, that there's got to be someone or something controlling those parts, I think. Yeah. And, I think that's what faith and religion is born out of, is, the idea that there's got to be some plan. This life can't be this cruel and random. There's got to be someone pulling the strings. And I think that's maybe where we have this idea that, we have to live a certain way or something. Yeah.
And we can't break that mold, or something's going to happen. It's like, so I mean, from my understanding, a lot of the stories, it is that line that you're talking about, and do you portray people breaking that line?
I do, and I think, if you could put this in any genre, it would probably be horror. I mean, a lot of the stories are just straight up literary fiction, but I think they're scary because in the everyday ways, right? I call them love stories, but that's because when you love somebody, you're essentially living in fear on a certain level. Yeah. And, I think that's where the horror comes, getting attached to something or somebody. Yeah. And then, of course, by doing that, you're living with the fear of losing it.
And then and that big day that, say, something does happen to you, it's like your heart's been ripped open, and it's worse than death.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's just many of stories and songs written about the destructive possibility of love, and it can do you, it can make you do some pretty bad things.
Well, I believe that love doesn't always make you a better person, right? I mean, it can make us show our true colors, and sometimes it's pretty ugly.
Yeah. Well, that's, humans can go either way. It's, two roads, right? Good or bad. Good or bad, and where do you go from there? So where do you hope this, from here, where do you go from here? Are you working on some more material? Are you going in a different area of writing?
Well, so I have a novel, actually, that's in the process of, I've sold it to a publisher, and we're editing it, and it's probably going to be coming out, I don't know, in the next 6-8 months. And it's more fantasy sci-fi, I would say, than horror, but again, it's all about religious themes and what to believe in and why and things like that. So, I haven't quite escaped what I'm always drawn to, but genre-wise, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, but that's human beings, though, isn't it?
I think so. I think so. I mean, I've heard it said that we tell the same stories over and over again. And I think I kind of do. I just keep finding new ways to
because we always try to find a morality to the story that we're trying to portray. Because, I mean, throughout history, every story since there's always a morality tale somewhere.
Kind of.
You know, like I don't know. Do you tell any kind of a morality tale, or kind of a like?
I never intend to.
Does it end up that way though?
I think
unintentionally.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
The morality in my stories probably comes from the idea that like people who do bad things aren't necessarily bad people, right?
Okay.
Or people who you would think are just like the worst of the worst and so evil. You dig deep enough, and it's never that simple. You know, it would be great if it was all black and white, but it's not.
Yeah.
Right? And I think maybe that's sort of the morality of the stories, is it's all about the choices you make, right? And some of them are bad, some of them are good, some are generous, some are selfish. But maybe that's the morality of it.
Is that yeah? Because I mean, you know, it's when you love too much or you want too much, it's that's a morality tale in itself, because anything anything in life, you too much of anything is not good for us, right?
Well, one of the stories in here is a longer one. It's more of a novella, and it's about a guy who has been very overweight his whole life. And in the last year, he's lost a lot of weight. And his life is really changing, and he's kind of having an identity crisis. He doesn't know who he is now that he's not heavy, and he has kind of realized that he hasn't been living his own life. He's been living the life that's been prescribed by others for him.
Right.
And so he's at work, and he just runs away, gets in his car, and he drives away. And he finds this apartment in a new city, and the landlords are a bit strange. So it's a story about appetites.
Oh, okay.
And greed and excess, and what that can do in either direction.
And that's there again. That's our human flaws coming together, because you know,
for sure,
we always want to be perfect, as you know, like the gods of old, you know, Egypt, or whatever.
Reaching for it.
Trying to, I guess we're always trying to obtain that purity that we can never attain.
Well, that's what Robert Browning said, right? That a man's reach must exceed his grasp, else what's a heaven for?
No, exactly. I mean, why do we believe in such things if we're not trying to be that?
I think if we knew we could be perfect, we wouldn't try as hard as we do.
Well, that's
right.
That's part of the human condition, to always our better self. But I mean, if we're omnipotent or perfect, wouldn't life be kind of
exactly?
boring?
I don't think we'd try for it.
I mean, isn't that what the old stories of all these ancient beings that used to, pyramids and all that stuff? They were, from all these things, they were perfect. They were, they were bored, and and the humans, or the slaves or whatever, they were just amusement for them, as they say.
We learn and grow more from when we try for something and we fail. We learn and grow more from that than when we try and succeed, I think.
Oh yeah, because you're always looking for different
failures that define us, really, not as failures, but that's how we decide.
You learn that your thoughts there's a different way of going about it now. We thought, you get this straight line that I'm like this, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, that's not what you do. There's another way around it to your goal, so. So your next. So do you ever plan on going to a different genre than say the human psyche, I guess, or is that just where you think you really enjoy being in that area of writing?
Here's where I kind of think, like, I don't really believe in genre.
Oh, okay.
I work in a bookstore, so obviously I understand the practicality of knowing where to put a book on the shelf. But outside of the marketing of it and the classifying for consumer benefit, I don't believe in genre. I sit down to write a story and I just kind of have an idea or an image or a character, and I'm not thinking, oh, this is going to be horror, or this is going to be just, literary fiction, or this is going to be dipping into fantasy or magic realism. I don't think that way. It makes for a lot of rejection. It's hard to tell a story when you don't write in a genre.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because I mean, everybody has their. I mean,
Yeah.
we think of horror, you think of Stephen King or whatever. I mean, it's just one I just pulled on my head at the moment. But everybody's sort of cornholed to a certain area. So I guess what I'm trying to get after is, so you don't want to be the writer that's doing just this.
I don't think I could be. I don't like. I
You
just
know,
don't.
it's just a.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I tend to write sort of darker stuff, but I don't think that I could ever be pigeonholed as a horror writer. Because,
Right, okay.
I write too many things that don't really neatly fall into that. And I don't know, like I think because I read really broadly too. I read in every genre there is, I think. And so that informs my own writing.
Right.
And I'm drawing influences from all kinds of places.
Okay. What else here to talk about? So where do you see yourself in 10 years with this? Or do you think you're going to be still writing in 10 years?
Oh yeah, I think
Okay.
so. I don't think I could ever stop. I
Stop,
mean, it would
okay.
I would try, and then it would just come leaking out of places I don't want it to.
So do you find yourself still being a novelist, or do you think
I won't ever stop writing short stories.
Okay.
To me, they're completely different. Like, I mean, they're both writing, but to me, they're such completely different animals. Like, short stories is a completely different way of writing than novels.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is
They're
if you're,
both challenging, but they're completely different.
do you see yourself doing a novel in the near future?
Well, I've
A
got
bigger project?
Well, you talk to enough writers, we all have like these, trunk stories and trunk novels that we've got, either a finished manuscript or it's half finished or it's just garbage and, they're all in a drawer somewhere.
Right.
But I think I've got more novels in me for sure.
Okay. So how do you deal with your stress?
Well, I run and I drink. More running than drinking.
Well, that's good. So
I'm mostly kidding about the drinking.
Well, you got to have a few things that relax you, once in a while. But are you? So what kind of running do you like? Are you a marathon runner? Or?
Yeah, I'm a marathon runner, so I've been running marathons I ran my first one, I guess, about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Then didn't run one again for a few years, and then my dad, who I run with, every Saturday we do our long runs together.
Okay.
He started talking about maybe he wants to run a marathon, so we trained and we ran his first marathon in a little island called Bar Harbor in Maine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Gorgeous. It's an unbelievably magical place. I can see why writers set their books in Maine so much, just because it's, I don't know, there's stories in the earth there. So I run long distances, and it helps me not only relax, but it helps me focus. Like if I'm trying to sort out a problem with a story, I'll go for a run, and it sort of makes for this distillation of thoughts. Your body is working hard, and so there's no room for all the chatter. It's just what matters here, and that tends to come out to the surface. And
I guess the running, the adrenaline you get going through your system, your brain just. Do you listen to music when you run, or are you one of those people that just have the environment?
I listen to music sometimes when I run, but often that's just kind of in the background, like it's just sort of background noise for my thinking. And I find, I don't know, I just find the physical exertion and the exhaustion from, nothing else gets it done for me like that. I need to get to that state of, I just can't go anymore.
Right, that runner's high.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know, I think I'm addicted to running. I think if I had an addiction, they could go into unhealthy levels. That's probably it.
Well, running, yeah. Well, it's that's that euphoria when you're pushing your body.
Yeah, and when you miss a run, it's like the world is actually falling apart right now. You can't see it, but it is happening because I missed a run.
Yeah, exactly. I missed a run.
Yeah.
So you're doing a tour from a book tour. Did it start in Calgary?
It started in Calgary.
And today you're in Red Deer, and I understand Edmonton.
Edmonton tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
It's been very informative. And I hope the rest of your book tour goes quite well.
Thank you very
Book
much.
signing.
Thank you for talking to me.
Quite sure we'll be hearing more about you in the future.
Hopefully.
And yeah, I hope you keep pushing the envelope to keep people thinking.
I don't think I could stop if I wanted to.
All right. Well, this is Dave for Red Deer City TV in Red Deer, Alberta at Chapters with Sarah Johnson. And have a nice day, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, Red Deer.